As you can tell, I am not Aidan. Aidan couldn't make it in this week. He'll be back next week, though. Don't worry. We still got a lot to talk about this week. Phillies, Sixers, Flyers, and even a little golf at the end. We'll be back on Sports Talk Philadelphia. Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. I am your interim host, Mike Holden. I am joined by my panelist, Libby Gilliland. Libby, how are you?
I am great, Mike. How are you?
Good. Shane, how you doing?
I'm doing good so far.
Cool. I know you want to talk some Phillies. We're going to jump right into it now. A little frustrating start to the season for the Phils. They're currently sitting at 4-8. The first two games, sweep against the Rangers. Next two games, 1-2 versus the Yankees, 2-1 versus the Reds, and then they lose 2-3 to the Marlins. So Shane, I want to start with you. What are your kind of takeaways from the first week of this season so far for the Phils?
They just haven't looked ready to start the season so far. I mean, they look like they're kind of still in spring training mode, and I mean, they are hitting the ball because they rank in the National League. They're ranked second in average, but they're not hitting with runners in scoring position, and that's a big problem they're having right now, especially with guys like JT Realmuto and Kyle Schwarber, who kind of have that power, especially Schwarber, and you can't be waiting until June for him to pick it up. He has to start hitting the ball as well as JT.
Yeah, and especially, not having Harper and other guys got to step up. And Libby, I'm going to go to you. Who kind of has been your kind of standout player so far through the first 12 games of the season?
Yeah, Brandon Marsh has had a very good batting average this season so far. And I talked about it a few weeks ago that I thought he was really going to hit his stride with hitting this season, and it's showing up. So I'm hopeful that he will continue to bat well, and you need that. You're still missing Harper, and hopefully he's going to come back soon, but you have to have guys step up. You've got Alec Bohm and Stott who are hitting really well in addition, but it just kind of seems like they're, like Shane said, still in spring training mode. You've got Trey Turner, Josh Harrison, and Sosa who's playing more, but it feels like they're just still adjusting to Philly, which is okay, but they're going to need to start picking it up to be in contention. I know it's early, but you got to get a head start.
Yeah, you mentioned all those names like Sosa, Harrison. A lot of question has been, center field and kind of what Rob Thompson's going to do this year. And it seems like Brandon Marsh has been their, everyday center fielder, but he has switched it up against lefties. Shane, I'm curious, do you view Brandon Marsh as your everyday center fielder, especially with the way he's playing now?
Yeah, I do, and I have a big problem with the way Rob Thompson is handling this right now, because he's switching him and Christian Pache off in center field. And Brandon Marsh actually has good numbers, so he's batting above 300 against left-handed hitters this year. But for whatever reason, Rob Thompson doesn't want to put him in there against left-handed pitchers. And I mean, yesterday the game when he's put in Christian Pache in there, and in the bottom of the ninth, you had a runner on second or in the bottom of the 10th, you had a runner on second because of the new rule. And he goes up there, and Rob Thompson tells him before he goes up there that he either has the option to either swing the bat or bunt the ball to move the runner over the third. Why are you telling a guy who is struggling to hit the ball, who has not hit the ball when he was with the Braves and the minors at all, why are you giving him this option to either swing the bat or bunt the ball? He's obviously going to swing the bat, and he did that, and he popped up, and he did not move the runner over to third yesterday in yesterday's game, which could have possibly tied the game or gave them the win with Stott and Turner coming up, even though they didn't do anything. But
yeah, and I totally agree with you. I understand, the lefty-lefty matchup, but I think when a guy's batting 387, he's your everyday guy. And especially you mentioned Pache, we bring him for defense. I'd rather have Marsh in there. I don't care if, he's in a little funk against lefties. I think he should be your everyday guy. I agree with you, Shane. And then moving now towards the injuries for the Phils, a lot of injuries here early in the season. Derek Hall, who was filling in for Rhys Hoskins, obviously lost Rhys to a torn ACL. He's out for a couple months. Garrett Stubbs got banged up a couple games ago. He's not on the injury list, though. And then the big news is Bryce Harper. He said he would play first base. He's getting closer and closer to starting minor league games, getting his rehab really, ramped up and back to playing. So, Libby, I'm going to go to you. What's your opinion on having Bryce Harper at first base, to start off until he's fully healthy to play in right field again?
Yeah, I think he's the guy who he wants to get back on the field. It is very obvious. I think he's a team guy. He's going to do what he can to help the team, and right now, first base is where they need help. I'm not sure if that puts extra pressure on him. You know, he's coming back from surgery, and it's important to point out that this doesn't necessarily accelerate his timeline. Tommy John surgery is not something you can rush, so he needs to continue to rehab, and when he's ready, they'll put him out there. But it could get him on the field quicker than if he was playing right field. So does it put more pressure on him to come back faster and help the team? Maybe, but if he's really in it and is feeling good and they like him in first, I can see it as a possible option for a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Shane, I'm interested, what do you think? Do you think, you take that risk and rush it a little bit, or do you just wait, until he's fully healthy?
Well, I mean, Rob Thompson did say they do have a set date of when Harper will be back. He didn't say what that date was, but I mean, we've heard that it could be by Memorial Day or whatever. But we know that when he comes back, they said he won't be playing the field right away. He will still be DHing when he comes back, and then maybe by June or July is when he'll be playing the field. And I think it is a good idea to maybe try him out at first base because with his arm, I mean, it's shorter throws at first base and stuff like that. So you're not really stretching out that arm as you would in right field and throwing the ball as hard as you can in right field, trying to throw a runner out. So I think this could be a good idea, and it could help him at first base.
Yeah, I think any way to get, that bat into the lineup, whatever you can do, obviously, Bryce Harper's one of the best players in the league. Getting that bat in there is crucial. And I know last year they played well, when he was out of the lineup, but, they're struggling now, and hopefully they can, stay afloat. And another struggle for them has been their pitching, especially their starting pitching. Their starters had a combined record of 1-5. Matt Strahm, who wasn't even brought in here to be a starter, has gotten the only win. Sir Anthony Dominguez and Craig Kimbrell both have ERAs over 10, and only 2 starters have gone above 15 innings, and that is Nola and Wheeler. And then the bullpen has pitched so many innings because of just lack of pitching in the starting rotation. So, Shane, I'm going to go with you. I kind of want to start with Nola. This is a contract year for him, obviously. There's doubts about if he'll be back next year. Through these first 3 games, what have you seen? What have you seen from him? Is he not ready? Is he not prepared? What have you seen?
I just feel like we've been seeing what we've been seeing for the past couple of years. This is what he is. He hits the 4th or 5th inning, and he starts walking people, he gets people on base, and then he just can't throw strikes, especially when he gets into an 0-2 count. After he gets somebody in an 0-2 count, he's either throwing a pitch right down the middle of the plate or he's walking them. And it's just something that we've seen over time and time again. And people are saying, oh, it's the pitch clock and stuff like that. No, it's not. You can't use that. You can't use that as an excuse because every team is dealing with that.
Yeah, and, like you said, every team's dealing with it. And I know, he tends to work a little slower, so I could see why it's affecting him. But, he's a major league pitcher. He's got to adjust. And, another guy they bring in, Taijuan Walker, who has not really lived up to his contract at all either. Libby, I'm curious, Ranger Suarez, he's coming back soon. Who's kind of the odd man out of this rotation when he comes back? Do you move Falter out? Do you move Strahm back? Or do you keep Strahm in the rotation? What's your opinion on, how the rotation looks when he comes back?
Yeah, I think you're just going to have to keep swapping them in and out and see what works. I don't know at this point, and it's so frustrating because looking at these scores, teams are scoring so many runs against the Phillies right now. 44 innings from the bullpen is too many. It's putting too much pressure on them, and it's just frustrating to see. So when he comes back, how do you adjust the lineup and get the most production out of your starting pitchers that you can to get some relief off of the bullpen?
Yeah, and pivoting to the bullpen a little bit, just to wrap up the Phillies talk here. The closer, you had Sir Anthony, you had Jose. The question was, who's going to be the closer? You bring Kimbrell. Alvarado has been good all season. I know he gave up that 1 home run yesterday. But, Shane, I'm curious, who do you think should be the Phillies closer? With Dominguez struggling and Alvarado gave up the home run last night, what's your take on just the closing situation right now?
I mean, I want to say Jose Alvarado just because he's been so good. I mean, he was the first pitcher since 1961 to strike out 11 consecutive batters in a single season. But you kind of still want him in that 7th or 8th inning just because, I mean, he's just comfortable there and he's been pitching there for a little bit, so you kind of don't want to mess that up. But I feel like Dominguez will get this right and he'll remain the closer.
Yeah, and I think, it's a tough decision because there's good arms out there, but, when you have closers who are struggling like this and you can't win games, you got to find, the right combination. And hopefully, Rob will do that. And hopefully, some of these guys like Kimbrell can try to find a rhythm a little bit. And, the season just started. So hopefully they can, find what they need to do and just get this right. And hopefully this is just, the first week of a frustrating start. Now on to another team the Sixers, who are starting their playoff run on Saturday in Philadelphia against the Brooklyn Nets. They finished this season with a 54-28 regular season record. That was good for third in the Eastern Conference behind the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics. And it was their most wins in a season since 2000 and 2001, since the Iverson, Mutombo teams of when they made it to the finals. So, Libby, this season's over now. I mean, the regular season's over, heading to the playoffs. How confident are you? I know they won these last 2 games of the regular season, but it was kind of more the bench. How confident are you heading into this Brooklyn series?
I want to say very confident. Embiid is going to have to stay healthy. That is the key here. But I do have to point out, 56 wins is the most wins since I was born. And being a Sixers fan for my entire life, I'm so excited about it. So feeling good, and hopefully that gives them some motivation. You know, they're making records within the franchise, and it's fantastic for them, but it's all going to come down to Embiid. It's going to be about Maxey playing well and the bench stepping up as well, which is something we've been talking about for weeks on end. And if all of those pieces come together, I think the Nets, it's a good matchup, and we can win the series, get on to the next round and see what we can do from there. But it's going to be staying focused, Doc Rivers getting his guys in check, and going out and playing your best.
Yeah, and like you said, 54 wins is not something to gloss over. I think it's kind of just lost in the fact that we are the third seed behind just how good the Celtics and Bucks are. You know, it's nothing to gloss over. 54 wins is great, but I still think there's just that Celtics looming over the Sixers, because they probably know that's coming up if they can get past the Nets in the first round. And speaking of the Sixers Celtics, Joel Embiid locked up, in my opinion, the MVP last Tuesday in a game against the Celtics. He finished the season with 33 points a game, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, most points per game for his second year in a row. And then he's now favored to win the MVP over Jokic by a huge margin. So, Libby, I told you my opinion. Do you think that game last Tuesday kind of solidified, MVP for him?
I think so. I don't know how it doesn't. When you talk about most valuable player, if the Sixers did not have Joel Embiid, they would not be in any position close to where they are now. So he is their most valuable player, and I think you can't even argue most valuable player in the league. I mean, he won that Celtics game. It was incredible to watch, and a little bit frustrating from the rest of the team because they didn't really show up and play, but he's like, okay, I'm going to win this anyway. It worries me going into the Celtics series, if we get there, that they're not going to have the personnel to run a 7-game series, and Joel Embiid cannot score that many points. Maybe he could, but consistently, it's a lot to ask, and it just puts a lot of stress on his body, who has been hurt a few times this year already.
Yeah, there's no denying how good Joel Embiid has been, but he's been criticized, especially lately, if he's more focused on MVP or winning the championship. So, Libby, I'm curious your opinion. Do you think he's more focused on the MVP and this, what happened in the regular season, or do you think he's, solely focused on the Nets and what happens, in these playoffs and wants to win a championship?
Yeah, if you look around this city right now, all of the billboards that say MVP'd is ridiculous. So I think the city is more focused on Joel Embiid being MVP, and I think he is too. Because it's been such a highlight the past few years, he hasn't won it and probably should have. This year, does he get over the hump? Does he get it? And if he doesn't get it, does it impact the way that he plays in the postseason? And it scares me. And this team has struggled in the playoffs in the past. They have a lot of playoff experience, but can they get over the hump and actually win some games and, get past the first round? That's what's ahead of us. Can they beat the Nets? And he's going to have to focus on that instead of what's out of his power.
Yeah, and, it's tough because he has been beaten out of it the last 2 years. And, we'll kind of see where his head's at. I think, if you ask a lot of Sixers fans, I think they'd probably much rather have a championship over MVP. Obviously, MVP is one of the greatest awards, especially in the NBA, all the good players. But, I think a lot of fans here, and I think he wants the championship, but obviously, losing out on MVP 2 years in a row, you want to get over the hump, like you said, Libby. So we'll see what happens with that. Now we'll kind of preview a little bit of the Sixers-Nets. We talked about it earlier. Sixers are the 3 seed, Nets are the 6 seed. They beat the Nets 4-1 in the 2019 playoffs. That was, if you remember, the Ben Simmons-Jared Dudley feud. Obviously, both players aren't on those teams anymore. Ben Simmons on the Nets, but he will not be in the arena. And the Nets finished with a 45-37 record this year. obviously not where they thought they were going to be. They thought they'd be one of the top teams with having Durant and Kyrie. Obviously, that has not turned out. Libby, I want to ask you, obviously the Nets, they're not a great team. They don't stack up that well to the Sixers, but they have a couple young guys, Mikal Bridges, Cam Thomas. You mentioned earlier, how difficult do you think this first-round matchup is going to be?
I think mentally it's going to be tough because they've had a tough season just trying to stay in that 3 position. Okay, they're there. And the Nets are not a team to scoff at. They still made it to the playoffs. So I know that they're the 6th seed, but like I said, the Sixers have struggled in the playoffs before. So it's really going to be mental. It's going to be Doc Rivers making his guys focus. It's going to be Embiid being absolutely focused on winning game by game, not looking ahead, not looking at the Celtics. Win this series, and then you can go do that. Maxi's going to have to play well. Harden's going to have to step up, and Embiid and Harden are going to have to stay healthy. Niang, that's somebody that I'm looking for to step up a little bit, and the rest of the bench. Who's going to be your playoff guy outside of your starting 5?
Yeah, and I agree. A lot of pressure is going to be on Doc Rivers and Embiid and the boys, so we'll see what happens. Now moving to another team kind of going in an opposite direction, the Flyers. Obviously, not to see, I guess we expected this. We'll get into it with Shane. We expected this year, but obviously we're disappointed. They broke their 7-game losing streak on Tuesday with a win over the Blue Jackets in overtime. They allowed 4 or more goals in all 7 games during this losing streak they're on, and then they got shut out by the Islanders 4-0 on Saturday. And also, low note, JVR did get his 300th goal on Tuesday night, and which is probably most likely his last game as he's going to retire. But Shane, I want to go to you. What's your, as the season wraps up, what's your overall thoughts of what transpired in this season?
I am so happy that the stressful season is almost over for this team. It's just been so up and down for this team, and there's obviously been miscommunication with previous GMs and the coach and stuff like that, and just some things with players and the coaches as well. With the past couple of games, John Tortorella has scratched Tony DeAngelo, and there's been something, a rumor that, he said something to Tony DeAngelo, and Tony DeAngelo has not been okay with it. So look for him to probably be moved in the offseason, as well as guys as JVR and Kevin Hayes as well.
Yeah, so kind of banking off that, they were eliminated from the playoffs last week. We kind of already knew that was going to happen. 3rd consecutive year that they're not in the playoffs. Again, we weren't expecting much this season, and then it's the first time actually in 3 years that they've gotten to 30 wins. So Shane, back to you. You mentioned some of the moves. What do you think is the most important thing, that the first thing that they need to do, to start in the right direction, to get this rebuild going and kind of speed it up a little bit?
Well, the first thing they're going to need to do is they're going to have to wait until the draft coming up, because this is supposed to be a good draft year, and that's how they're kind of going to have to build up the rebuild and build the farm system back up. And obviously, like I said, they're going to have to get rid of some players in the offseason as well, get rid of some contracts if they can, because these contracts are horrible. And maybe get rid of some more defensemen as well, like Travis Sanheim, and maybe probably Ivan Provorov, who we might see go.
Yeah, so, and obviously I probably know where this is going. Carter Hart's definitely the MVP of this season. He's best player on this team. What do you think his long-term future is with the Flyers? Obviously they have some old guys, and he's probably their one young guy. Do you think he's a Flyer for life, or do you think if this just doesn't go anywhere in the next couple of years, they can move on?
I feel like if they're not a playoff team in maybe the next 4 or 5 years, I feel like he will probably be traded to a contending team. This way, you can get assets and more higher picks for him. But I feel like, just as a fan in general, he should stay on this team and be the franchise goaltender for this team. In case they are good in 4 or 5 years, you don't have to keep searching for a goaltender. They finally have a goaltender that they can rely on. Just put a good product in front of them. Put good defense defense in front of them, and everything will be okay.
Yeah, as Flyers fans, for years we wanted a goaltender, and we finally have one, and I think, it would just be foolish, to get rid of Hart this early, but they have some young pieces, Joel Farabee, Owen Tippett, there's definitely some young pieces to build around there, but they did end the season, we're looking at these standings here, 30, 38, and 13. That was good enough for 7th place in the Metro standings, and now they currently have the 7th draft pick, and they have a 6% chance in landing the first pick in the lottery. So Shane, imagining that we're getting the 7th pick, around there, who is there, prospects there that could really help the Flyers, either right away or just in the future?
Yeah, and the guy who's projected to go 7th overall, his name's Colby Barlow of the Ontario Hockey League, and he's 17 years old, and he's a shoot-first guy, and this is somebody they need who has pure talent. He has scored 46 goals on this season, and they're not the NHL. They don't play 82 games. They play around maybe 50-something games. So that's almost a point per game, and that's somebody who they need on the front end. They need that type of player on offense, somebody who has a shoot-first mentality.
Yeah, and kind of just wrapping up, the Flyers here, Shane, how do you think John Tortorella handled his first year here in Philadelphia?
I feel like he handled it the best way he could. I mean, obviously he didn't have tons of talent to work with, but I feel like if they didn't have him as a coach, they definitely probably would have landed at a better shot at the first overall pick. Maybe be one of the top 3 teams in the running for that draft pick. But I feel like he kind of had this franchise take a step forward in the right direction.
Yeah, so a frustrating Flyers season to say the least. Wrapping up here, NHL playoffs, obviously one of the best tournaments in sports starting soon. But unfortunately, Flyers fans will be watching from the couch. But hopefully, hopefully this gets going in the offseason and we'll start seeing playoff hockey back here in Philadelphia soon. So now we're going to go back. We're going to go to the Fast Five now. First question, we're going to start with Shane. Just a little talking baseball with Shane Nolan. Shane?
Are the Tampa Bay Rays the best team in baseball? Of course they are. They are the last undefeated team in baseball with a 13-0 record, which ties the MLB modern era record to start the season. And they're doing it in all facets of the game with hitting, pitching, defense, and everything. So they're looking really good so far.
Yeah, and I think they just won today too, so they're still undefeated, and they're a fun team to watch. And it's not like they have that many stars in their team either. They got some good guys, but it's not like they're a big market. So they're definitely a fun team to watch. Shane, I'm going to go back to you. I'm going to pivot to hockey. Talking a lot about it earlier. NHL playoffs coming up. Who's your pick? The favorite. I know there's one team. I'm sure that's everybody's favorite. But who do you think is the pick to win the finals this year?
Yeah, I don't like picking the best team in the league, but I have to go with that this year in the Boston Bruins because finally they have all their top 3 lines working together. It's just not guys like Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, and David Pastrnak doing all the scoring and everything. They have a full team this year on offense and defense, and they have the goaltending because I think their goaltending has been the best this year in the league. So for me, it's going to be the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, Boston has looked so good this season, just dominant. I mean, 60-plus wins is just in hockey. It's crazy to think about, and it's just a dominant run they're on, and we'll see if that can, transpire into the hockey postseason because, with hockey, anything can happen. We saw with the Flyers in 2010, a low C can go far in that tournament. So it will be see. It's always fun to watch. Now going to a sport I'm not too familiar with, but luckily we have someone here who is. The Masters are this week, obviously one of the biggest golf tournaments. Libby, what's some of your takeaways from the Masters this week?
Yeah, it's the best week in golf. It's such a fun tournament. It's such a historical tournament. Jon Rahm won the green jacket, double bogeyed the first hole, and went on to win the Masters. That's incredible mentally, and that's what won him this event. They had really heavy rain. A whole tree fell down at Augusta. It was a mess. So they played through really, really tough conditions, and his mentality, his next shot first mentality was what won him this. And Brooks Koepka, who finished behind him, that's why he didn't win, because he was more focused on the trophy than the next shot ahead of him, and it really can bring you down when you're playing in tough conditions and through a 4-day stretch. So really, really fun event, and really happy that Rahm got to take away the green jacket from that.
All right, So, I'm not a big golf person, but it sounds like, obviously the weather is a big factor. What can the weather do, for, in these tournaments in golf, like the Masters?
Yeah, a lot. You've got wind, and these greens are so tough to read. So when it rains, the green speed is going to change. You're going to have to adjust that through your round. If the wind is blowing in one direction or the other, you're clubbing up, clubbing down, aiming in different places. It has a huge impact, and it just takes a lot mentally to get through the weather. We saw Tiger Woods withdraw because of the weather in his body. He just couldn't do it, and it really takes a toll. And Brooks Koepka didn't play in the toughest conditions. He played in the sun, and then Jon Rahm went out and played in the rain and the wind and still won. So just incredible performance overall, and a fun, little bit scary one to watch, but a fun one.
Sounds like a lot to look forward to from the Masters this week. Heading to the NBA now. I'll go to this one and jump over to Libby. Favorite to win the NBA Finals. To me, it's the Bucks, but I don't. On paper they're the favorite, but I think a lot teams to look for, especially in the West. The Suns. I think the Lakers are still dangerous, but I'm still riding with the Sixers. I think the Sixers could get to the finals. I'm kind of in the superstition that the other two teams did. I hope it doesn't end losing a championship, but I think that they have that momentum going, and I think. It's just if they can get past Boston in the second round, I think they can get there. But obviously that's been a struggle for them. But I'm going to go with the Sixers. Libby, who do you think, who's your favorite right now to win?
I really like Boston, and I hate saying that because I'm such a big Sixers fan, but it's going to come down to that Sixers-Boston series. If the Sixers get there, it's going to be the most fun series to watch, whoever you cheer for.
And wrapping up, last question, should the Athletics move from Oakland? They're thinking of going to Vegas after this year. A lot of talk there, but not much transpiring into that. But we will see kind of what happens there. I know their contract with I think they play in the Coliseum there in LA is done after 2024. So Vegas is becoming a hot spot for a lot of these professional teams to move to. So we'll see if kind of the Athletics, who have not had much success in Oakland the past few years, or really since I've been alive, see what they will do. Well, that's it on Sports Talk Philadelphia. I hope you guys enjoy your week. I hope I didn't do that bad of a job. I will be back next week as a panelist. Aidan will be back, but check us out on social media at Sports Talk LTV on Twitter and Sports Talk LTV on Instagram. Let us know what you think of this episode and any ideas for next week. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Goodbye.